They say there are moments in life when truth arrives not as a whisper, but as a reckoning. It comes not gently, not politely, but like a sudden crack of thunder across a silent sky. And somewhere tonight, someone who once knew you, someone who once touched your heart, someone who once promised to stand with you, has just felt that thunder inside their soul. The truth has awakened them, and it has shaken them to their core, because they have finally realized something they were too blind, too distracted, too easily influenced to see. They are now standing face to face with the horrifying understanding that they were manipulated into destroying the very person who once loved them. They were guided, poisoned, nudged into killing the light that once chose them, and now they cannot escape what they've done. You see, guilt is not a gentle visitor. It does not knock softly on the door of the mind. It breaks in, it floods every corner, and when truth finally takes its seat, it drags every hidden memory back into the light. The lies they believed, the voices they trusted, the envy that whispered to them, the jealous hearts that pushed them, the shadows that cheered their downfall, and suddenly the person they betrayed, the soul they abandoned, the life they wounded, it all returns to them like a haunting. Not to punish them, but to reveal what they allowed themselves to become. There is something terrifying about realizing too late who was real. There is something soul-crushing about remembering the loyalty you threw away, the kindness you crushed, the heart you stepped on while thinking you were following the truth. Only now do they understand that the people feeding them stories about you were not protecting them. They were destroying them. They twisted your goodness into something suspicious. They painted your sincerity as manipulation. They convinced your ex that you were the threat, that you were the poison, that you were the one holding them back. And now, in the middle of their quiet hour, when the world has stopped spinning and the noise has died, the mask has fallen from every face that misled them, there is a certain silence that exposes everything, a silence in which the heart can no longer lie to itself. That silence has arrived for them, and in that silence they finally see you. Not the version they were taught to fear, not the distorted shadow they were convinced to hate, but the real you, the one who cared too deeply, the one who stood too faithfully, the one who loved too honestly, and now the weight of that truth is crushing them in ways you will never have to witness. They thought they were walking away from a burden. They thought they were freeing themselves from a problem. They believed the whispers that told them you were the enemy of their peace. But today, the quiet truth has returned to collect its due, and it will not leave until they face every memory, every choice, every moment they allowed someone else's poison to guide their hand. Because now they realize that they were not protecting themselves from you, they were protecting the manipulators from being exposed. And in the process, they sacrificed the one soul who would have fought for them, prayed for them, protected them, and stood beside them through storms they never even saw coming. The tragedy is not just what they did. The tragedy is what they destroyed in themselves by doing it. And now they must face the one truth they never imagined would come for them. They were manipulated into killing the very heart that loved them. A mind that once felt secure can unravel in a single moment when truth finally pierces the fog that has been covering it. For so long your ex moved through life believing the whispers that surrounded them, thinking those voices were shields of protection rather than weapons aimed at their heart. They never imagined that the people they trusted were quietly shaping their thoughts, bending their emotions and guiding their decisions with subtle, poisonous influence. These voices did not shout, they did not command, they simply planted seeds, small, quiet doubts designed to grow in secret until they strangled the truth. And now, As clarity rises within them like an unwelcome sunrise, they can finally see what those seeds were meant to accomplish. The people who spoke against you acted with deliberate intent. They watched the bond you shared. They saw the loyalty you gave. They recognized the strength of your love, and instead of celebrating it, they feared it. They feared how deeply you cared. They feared how much influence your goodness had. They feared the power of the connection you both shared, so they decided to fracture it, quietly, methodically, and under the disguise of concern. With every small suggestion, every raised eyebrow, every, "I'm just trying to protect you," they pulled your ex further away from you and closer to the version of reality they wanted them to believe. Manipulation rarely looks like manipulation when you are inside it. It often comes dressed as advice, caution, friendship, or wisdom. It comes from familiar faces. Faces your ex had no reason to question. Faces they trusted for years. And because of that trust, each lie slipped in effortlessly. Each doubt entered their mind without resistance. Each fear grew until it overshadowed the truth of who you were. They were taught to see your goodness as a mask, your sacrifices as control, your loyalty as danger. It takes only a few well-placed lies to turn a loving heart into a fearful one. And that is exactly what happened. You were not replaced by someone better. You were replaced by someone louder, someone more strategic, someone whose jealousy ran deeper than your ex ever understood. They watched as you loved with sincerity, and they could not stand the thought of you being the one thing your ex relied on more than them. So they rewrote the story. They painted you as a threat to their peace, a barrier to their independence, an obstacle to their future. And your ex, unaware of the emotional warfare unfolding around them, accepted these distortions as truth. Only now do they see the terrifying reality. The same people who claimed to protect them were actually protecting themselves from being exposed. Your presence made their insecurities unbearable. Your strength highlighted their weakness. Your kindness made their intentions look corrupt. And instead of confronting their own darkness, they convinced your ex that you were the problem. They manipulated them into stepping away from you, abandoning you, and ultimately participating in the destruction of your spirit. The moment of realization hits with a force that cannot be softened. When the truth becomes undeniable, guilt floods the heart with a heaviness that feels almost physical. Your ex now understands how they were used as a weapon against the very person who cared for them most. They see how easily they surrendered to fear instead of questioning the motives behind the sudden wave of warnings about you. They recognize the pattern now. The timing of the accusations, the exaggerations, the subtle shifts in tone whenever your name was mentioned. Every piece fits together, forming a picture they wish they had never ignored. It is not easy to accept that you allowed yourself to be manipulated. It is even harder when that manipulation caused you to wound someone undeserving of the pain. Your ex must now confront the discomfort of knowing they were guided, pushed, and carefully conditioned into believing the worst about you. They must face the fact that they were not thinking with their own mind, not feeling with their own heart, not choosing with their own wisdom. Others thought for them, others felt for them, others chose for them, and the result was the quiet killing of a relationship that was once filled with genuine love. This realization does not pass quickly. It lingers. It sharpens every regret. It magnifies every memory of how gently you loved them, how patiently you tried, how deeply you cared even when you sensed something weakening between you. It is this contrast, the truth of your heart against the lies they embraced, that now torments them. And with every passing day, the truth becomes louder, more undeniable, more painful. The first crack in their peace began the moment they recognized the manipulation. The rest will follow. A soul begins to break the moment it realizes it has destroyed something it was never meant to lose. That is the torment now rising within your existence. A slow, suffocating realization that the person they wounded most deeply was the very one who loved them with the kind of purity they may never encounter again. It is not an easy truth to face. It is not a truth that slips quietly into the mind. It arrives like a shadow that refuses to leave, whispering reminders of every moment you stood by them, every time you offered understanding, every sacrifice you made without expecting anything in return. And now they must confront the devastating reality that they crushed the very heart that held them with sincerity. The world is full of counterfeit love, full of people who speak in sweet tones but carry selfish intentions, full of relationships that crumble at the slightest test. Yet you were different. You loved in ways that could not be faked, by showing up, by giving without calculation, by staying when others stepped back. You offered them a loyalty that many pray for but few ever receive. And instead of honoring it, they discarded it. Instead of protecting it, they allowed poisoned minds to convince them it was a trap. Your ex now lives with the knowledge that they did not walk away from harm, they walked away from healing. They did not escape toxicity, they escaped truth. They did not free themselves, they abandoned their refuge. Understanding this does not come gently. It strikes like a revelation that burns instead of comforts. Every memory they buried is rising again, but not as nostalgia, as judgment, as accountability, as a mirror showing them what they refused to see when they still had the chance to choose differently. No one forgets the person who loved them at their darkest. No one forgets the one who held their trembling hands when life felt too heavy. No one forgets the one who encouraged them, believed in them, prayed for them, and saw greatness in them when they couldn't see it in themselves. They were not pushed away by your flaws, they were pushed by the manipulative whispers around them. But the damage that followed, the hurt they caused, the emotional death they delivered to your heart, that burden belongs to them now. A conscience can sleep when it thinks it has done the right thing. It can rest when it believes it escaped danger. But when truth uncovers the lies, when hidden motives reveal themselves, when the masks fall from the faces that misled them, conscience awakens like a storm. Suddenly, they are left with the realization that they were not the victim of your love, they were the destroyer of it. And this truth cuts deeper than any wound they inflicted upon you. Your ex may try to rationalize their choices. They may attempt to quiet the guilt. But guilt born from recognizing genuine love too late is not easily silenced. It sits in the soul like a stone. It interrupts sleep. It changes the way memories feel. What once looked like arguments now looks like misunderstandings fueled by outside voices. What once appeared as distance now appears as manipulation guiding their thoughts. What once felt like self-protection now feels like betrayal of the wrong person. Regret is a haunting companion. It does not shout. It whispers when the world is quiet. It reminds them of your kindness when they try to forget it. It brings back your voice in moments of loneliness. It plays scenes of what they destroyed, exactly when they feel weakest. And the more they remember your love, the more unbearable their guilt becomes. The harsh truth now confronting them is that they did not just hurt you. They broke something sacred within themselves. They lost the one person who genuinely saw their soul, not their flaws. They turned away from the one heart that never wished them harm. They destroyed a connection that was real, something rare, something many seek and never find. And now they must face the painful understanding that the hands guiding them to betray you were not protecting them, they were stripping them of the greatest blessing they ever had. Every moment of silence brings them back to this one truth. They wounded the one who loved them most, and that is a wound that no one can heal for them. Guilt has a way of arriving when the world grows silent. It waits until distractions fade, until noise settles, until every room in the mind is still enough for truth to be heard, and when it finally steps forward, it does not come gently. It comes like a trembling in the chest, a tightening of breath, a sudden heaviness that no one can explain away. That is what now rises within your ex, an awakening so sharp that it slices through every justification they once clung to. They are beginning to see not only what they did, but who they allowed themselves to become under the influence of others. When a person realizes they have acted from fear instead of truth, from manipulation instead of clarity, the guilt that follows does not feel ordinary. It feels like stepping into a cold, harsh light that reveals every flaw, every weakness, every moment they chose comfort over courage. They must now confront the startling reality that the decisions they made were not born from their own values, but from borrowed fears. Someone else's bitterness became their compass. Someone else's jealousy became their logic. Someone else's insecurities became their truth. And in letting those voices guide them, they abandoned their own voice, the one that once trusted you. Guilt is not just the memory of wrongdoing. It is the echo of who they were meant to be. Your ex was not meant to become a weapon. They were not meant to turn against the one person who cared for them without conditions. Yet they did, and now the weight of that choice presses upon them with a force that cannot be softened. Every lie they believed, every warning they absorbed, every seed of doubt planted in their mind now reappears as evidence of how easily they surrendered their integrity. A person can only outrun guilt when they believe they were justified. But once truth returns, justification collapses. They remember the moments they ignored your pain. They recall the nights they left you questioning yourself. They revisit the silence they offered when you needed reassurance, the coldness they delivered when you reached out with warmth. At the time they believed they were acting wisely, protecting themselves from imagined dangers. Now they see those choices as cowardice dressed in caution. No one likes to admit they were manipulated. No one wants to believe they betrayed someone because they lacked the courage to question a false narrative. And yet this is the very truth now confronting them. They must face the haunting understanding that the person they became during that time is not someone they can defend. The choices they made were not reflections of their heart, but reflections of the poison they absorbed from others. It is a painful thing to realize that you were not acting out of truth, but out of fear disguised as truth. This awakening feels like a mirror placed too close to the face, showing every crack, every shadow, every mark left behind by regret. Your ex is seeing themselves in that mirror now. They see the version of themselves who walked away from you without looking back. They see the version who believed rumors instead of memories, accusations instead of experiences, fear instead of love. They see how easily they accepted someone else's story of who you were instead of trusting their own. And now guilt sits with them like an unwelcome guest that refuses to leave. It interrupts their peace during quiet moments. It brings back your voice at unexpected times. It replays the softness of your devotion, reminding them of what they silenced. It shows them the purity of your intentions, contrasted with the corruption of the lies they embraced. This comparison alone is enough to break a spirit. The worst part of guilt is not remembering what they did. It is realizing what they allowed themselves to become. They were meant to protect the connection you shared, yet they protected the comfort of those who envied that connection. They were meant to defend your character, yet they defended the words of those who wanted to see you fall. They were meant to trust the heart that loved them, yet they trusted the mouths that misled them. And now, as truth presses against every hidden corner of their conscience, they must finally acknowledge that the person they became during that time is not someone they recognize, and certainly not someone they are proud of. People often fail to recognize darkness when it comes disguised in the faces they trust. Your ex believed they were surrounded by those who cared, by people who understood their heart, by voices that deserved a place in their decisions. Yet the same individuals who appeared protective were the ones quietly feeding the poison. They never acted out of love. They acted out of insecurity. They did not warn your ex because they saw danger in you. They warned them because they saw goodness in you. Goodness that threatened to expose their own intentions. The truth that is now dawning on your ex feels like a blade cutting through layers of denial. They are beginning to understand that the people they relied on were never guardians of their peace. They were saboteurs of their growth. These individuals were not comforting advisors, they were architects of division. When jealousy roots itself in a heart, it can twist even the most innocent conversations into instruments of destruction, and that is exactly what happened. Your ex was not guided by wisdom, they were guided by people who could not bear the thought of them being truly loved. Jealousy often hides itself behind concern. It uses phrases like, "I'm just being honest," "I'm only looking out for you," or "I don't want you to get hurt." But beneath these words lies a deeper motive, fear. Fear that your love was stronger than their influence. Fear that your presence in your ex's life made them feel smaller, less important, overshadowed. They wanted your ex dependent on them, seeking their approval, relying on their opinions. Your relationship threatened that hold, threatened their control, threatened their relevance. So they set out to sever the connection quietly, piece by piece, while pretending to protect. Your ex trusted those voices because they came from familiar lips. They never questioned why every warning was one-sided. They never saw how those people flinched when your name was mentioned, how tension filled the room whenever your strength or integrity showed. They missed the subtle shifts, the nervous glances, the forced smiles, the signs of people who feared being exposed in the light of your authenticity. You lived with sincerity, and sincerity is something manipulators cannot stand. The heartbreaking truth your ex now faces is that these people never cared about their well-being. They cared only about ensuring that your influence never outshined theirs. They spoke against you because they knew they could not compete with what you offered: stability, depth, compassion, truth. You provided what they could not, so they decided to destroy what they could not imitate. They twisted your flaws into weapons, your mistakes into accusations, your kindness into manipulation, and your ex, unaware of the quiet war unfolding around them, believed it all. Nothing torments the conscience more than realizing you were deceived by the very people you defended. Your ex is beginning to see the pattern now, how the same individuals who encouraged them to walk away from you offered no support once you were gone. How the same voices that warned them about you brought no peace into their life. How the same people who claimed to know your character so well could not show evidence of their claims. Everything is unraveling in front of them, and each thread reveals another layer of deceit. This revelation is not gentle. It shakes the foundation of every belief they once held. It forces them to evaluate every conversation, every warning, every subtle nudge that guided them away from the truth. Each realization brings a new wave of regret. They see now that you were not the danger. You were the target. Your heart, your loyalty, your light. These were the very things others envied. They could not stand the idea of your ex finding comfort in your presence, so they poisoned the well until everything tasted bitter. Understanding that they walked away from love because someone else felt threatened by it is a burden that grows heavier each day. Your ex now recognizes the cruelty behind those manipulations. They can no longer pretend those people acted with good intentions. Their motives were rooted in fear, not love, in jealousy, not protection. And as this truth settles deeper into their mind, they must accept that the people they trusted were smiling with their lips while sabotaging with their hearts. The light of truth is brutal, but it is also cleansing. Your ex can finally see the hands that tore your relationship apart, and none of them were yours. Their protection was never the goal, control was. And now, that realization is beginning to choke the peace they once thought they gained. Clarity is a strange visitor. It does not arrive when a person is surrounded by noise, nor when pride is loud enough to drown its voice. It waits. It waits for the moment when life grows quiet, when distractions fade, when the heart becomes still enough to hear the truth it once rejected. That quiet hour has finally reached your ex, and in that silence they see you not through the lens that others placed over their eyes, but through the memory of your actions, your patience, your devotion. They see the gentleness they once mocked, the consistency they once questioned, the loyalty they once doubted. Every lie collapses when held against the truth of who you really were. Your ex once believed a distorted image of you, an image crafted by people whose intentions were never pure. They accepted negative words about you because those words offered emotional convenience. It was easier to doubt you than to challenge the voices that claimed to protect them. But now, as the fog lifts, they see your true nature with breathtaking clarity. They remember how you treated them in their weakest moments, how you stood by them when their world was falling apart, how you spoke with compassion even when you were hurting yourself. These memories rise with a painful contrast against the twisted stories others told about you. A heart that once dismissed your sincerity now recognizes it as the very thing it should have treasured. The quiet strength you carried, the patience you embodied, the way you loved without needing applause. These traits were never signs of manipulation. They were signs of depth, and your ex now understands that the version of you they were warned to fear was nothing more than a shadow cast by jealous minds. You did not hide a darker intention behind your kindness. You did not disguise malice as love. You simply cared, honestly, wholeheartedly, without strategy. The realization of your true nature hits them at unexpected moments. A random memory brings them back to the way your voice softened when they were upset. A familiar scent reminds them of evenings when you stayed a little longer just to make sure they felt safe. A passing thought brings an image of the sacrifices you made without ever mentioning them. These recollections pierce them because they stand in sharp contrast to the lies they were fed. They were taught to see you as a threat, yet every memory shows you were a shield. Regret grows stronger each time they compare the truth of who you were with the twisted portrayal that poisoned their mind. They now see how unfairly they judged you, how easily they dismissed your explanations, how quickly they accepted the worst interpretation of your actions. It is not easy to admit that someone misjudged the purest heart in their life, but your ex is beginning to carry that weight, and the guilt that follows is not momentary. It is steady, persistent, unavoidable. When a person finally understands the truth, they also understand the magnitude of what they lost. Your ex is facing the painful awareness that the comfort you provided was real, the love you gave was real, the loyalty you offered was real. And now that the lies have dissolved, they are confronted with the reality that they walked away from someone who meant them no harm. They abandoned the one person who genuinely saw the best in them, even when they could not see it themselves. The purity of your heart becomes even more evident in their memories, because it stands unmoving, unchanged, untouched by the chaos that surrounded them. You did not retaliate. You did not expose them. You did not speak against them. You simply carried your hurt in silence, refusing to become the monster they were told you were. And that grace now echoes in their conscience with a force that cannot be silenced. Understanding who you truly were is a slow, painful process for them because it reveals how deeply they failed you. It shows them the gap between the truth of your character and the lies they believed. It reminds them that loyalty from someone like you was not a gift they deserved lightly. And now that they see it clearly, they cannot escape the ache that comes from knowing they misread the one soul who genuinely loved them. This book is my who for anyone who loves them. A wound inflicted on another person always becomes a wound in the one who delivered it, even if the pain takes its time to surface. That is the weight your ex must now carry, not only the knowledge of what they did to you, but the recognition of what their actions did to their own soul. In choosing to believe the lies, in choosing to walk away, in choosing to treat you as the enemy, they created a fracture inside themselves far deeper than the one they left in you. The heart cannot betray someone pure without losing something essential in the process. People often imagine that hurting someone else is a clean break, something that fades with time, something that disappears once the relationship is over. But the truth is far more haunting. When a person turns against someone who loved them with sincerity, the betrayal becomes a shadow that follows them long after the moment passes. It settles into the quiet spaces of the mind. It alters the way they view themselves. It becomes a mirror they want to avoid because it reflects a version of themselves they never intended to become. Docs once believed that by stepping away from you, they were reclaiming control. They thought they were protecting themselves from harm, asserting independence, choosing peace. But now that the truth is uncovered and the fog has cleared, they see that the harm they inflicted did not free them. It imprisoned them. They live with the knowledge that their actions destroyed not only the heart that cared for them, but the part of themselves that was capable of receiving that care. The person cannot sever a bond rooted in truth without tearing something inside themselves. Guilt becomes their new companion, but it is not the only one. Shame arrives too. Shame for believing lies over loyalty. Shame for turning cold towards someone who never gave them a reason to doubt. Shame for becoming a version of themselves shaped by jealousy, insecurity, and manipulation. Shame for realizing they acted out of fear instead of love. This shame is not the dramatic kind. It is quiet, persistent, difficult to escape. It shows up when they try to sleep. It whispers when they are alone. It colors their reflection when they look in the mirror. A person who betrays a genuine soul is forced, sooner or later, to confront the emptiness they created within themselves. Your ex now faces that emptiness, the decision to hurt you, to abandon you, to dismiss your pain. It hollowed out something meaningful in them. They can feel the difference in how they trust, how they love, how they express themselves. Their actions did not just push you away. They pushed away a part of their own humanity. They silenced the part of themselves that once recognized goodness and embraced it. This inner damage reveals itself in subtle ways. They find themselves questioning their own judgment. They struggle to feel safe in relationships. They distrust their ability to recognize sincerity, and every time someone shows them affection now, they remember how they mishandled yours. They wonder if they are deserving. They fear repeating the same mistakes. They fear meeting another heart like yours because they know deep down they squandered the last one. Your ex did not simply lose you, they lost the version of themselves you brought out. The softer version, the kinder version, the version that believed in second chances, in forgiveness, in unconditional love. That part of them weakened the moment they helped destroy the heart that nurtured it. They may try to rebuild it with someone else, but the foundation is cracked, and the memory of their betrayal haunts every attempt to grow. What they did to you returns to them in ways they did not expect. They feel the absence of your support. They feel the lack of your understanding. They feel the void your presence once filled. But more than anything, they feel the loss of their own integrity, the most painful consequence of all. A heart can recover from losing someone. A conscience takes far longer to recover from losing itself. The pain you endured became the lesson they now live with, and the wound they carved into your spirit has become the wound that echoes through their own. They may try to hide it, they may try to ignore it, but the soul never forgets who it harmed unjustly. And now, your ex must live with the truth that hurting you did not just break your heart, it broke something sacred in themselves. Understanding always arrives late for the one who believed lies, but its arrival is unavoidable. Every false narrative your ex accepted is now unraveling before their eyes, and with each unraveling thread, another sharp truth emerges. The stories they once clung to for comfort now stand exposed as deliberate fabrications. The warnings they once believed so blindly now reveal themselves as masks worn by people threatened by your presence, and the excuses they once used to justify their treatment of you fall apart the moment they compare them to the reality of who you were. What they once considered concern from others now appears as jealousy. What they once interpreted as advice now looks like manipulation. What they once saw as truth now reveals itself as insecurity disguised as wisdom. Every lie they once believed now walks back into their mind, not as guidance, but as haunting reminders of how easily they were led away from someone whose only intention was to love them. And each realization cuts deeper, because it exposes not just what they were told, but what they allowed themselves to believe. A lie gains its power not from being convincing, but from aligning with a fear already inside the listener. Your ex carried wounds, doubts, insecurities they never acknowledged, and those who whispered against you knew exactly how to exploit them. They fed the wounds, amplified the doubts, inflated the insecurities, and watched as your ex slowly drifted from the person who genuinely cared. Now, as clarity sharpens their vision, they recognize how vulnerable they were to the voices that promised protection but delivered destruction. Every memory now returns in a different light. Moments they interpreted as flaws now appear as misunderstandings twisted by outsiders. Times they believed you were distant are now remembered as moments when you were overwhelmed and they failed to see it. Situations they judged harshly suddenly feel different because they now understand how much pressure you were under while still trying to hold everything together. They once believed the worst about you because it was easier than confronting the truth about the people they trusted. Regret has a way of replaying the past like a film, but not the version they once saw. This time it shows the reality. Your tears they ignored, your explanations they brushed aside, your attempts to save the relationship they dismissed as manipulation. They see your patience, your gentle attempts to fix things, your unwavering desire to make it work, all against the backdrop of lies that pushed you into the role of the villain, and the contrast is unbearable. The truth they now see is not just about your character. It is about the magnitude of the deception they accepted. They begin to recognize the timing of the lies, how the whispers intensified every time the bond between you grew stronger, how rumors surfaced at moments when you were vulnerable, how the people who claimed to protect them were oddly silent when the relationship finally broke. These patterns are impossible to ignore once the veil lifts, and each revelation adds another weight to their conscience. Painful clarity now forces them to face the central truth. They abandoned someone who loved them for people who were threatened by that love. They turned away from authenticity to embrace the comfort of deceit. They sacrificed a bond built on sincerity for the illusions crafted by those who envied your light. And now the lies return to them, not as guidance, but as judgment. Every false belief becomes a reminder of the heart they wounded, based on stories that were never real. This realization transforms guilt into something deeper, a kind of internal collapse. They can no longer excuse their behavior as confusion or protection. They must face the fact that they chose to believe the worst because it required no courage, no introspection, no loyalty. They must sit with the understanding that every lie they believed created a crack in the relationship until the foundation finally shattered. They must acknowledge that the truth did not fail them, they failed the truth. The weight of knowing they traded sincerity for deception now follows them like a shadow, a reminder that they once held something rare and allowed it to slip away because someone else whispered a more convenient story. And nothing is more torturous than realizing too late that what they sacrificed was real, and what they embraced was nothing but an illusion. A moment always comes when the heart can no longer outrun the truth it tried so desperately to avoid. Your ex has reached that moment. The realization that they were manipulated into killing your spirit has become the first crack in the wall they built around their conscience. And cracks never stay small. They spread, they widen, they expose everything hidden behind them. This truth is not simply information, it is a reckoning, a force that demands they confront the weight of what they allowed themselves to participate in. Facing this truth feels like standing in a room suddenly stripped of all light. They can no longer pretend that their actions were accidents or misunderstandings. Every choice they made, every cold word they spoke, every silent punishment they delivered now appears as a chapter in a story they helped write. And the haunting part of this realization is knowing they did not write it alone. They were guided, pushed, shaped, and carefully positioned by people who wanted your downfall more than they wanted your ex's happiness. Once a person understands they were used as a tool, the guilt that follows does not feel like ordinary regret. It feels like a collapse of identity. Your ex is now confronting the terrifying question, how could I let myself become the weapon that harmed the one who loved me? This question has no comforting answer. It echoes in their chest, in their thoughts, in their memories. Every time they try to silence it, another memory rises, a memory of your kindness, your patience, your devotion. The contrast is too sharp to ignore. It cuts deeper each time. The collapse they are experiencing is spiritual before it is emotional. A person cannot participate in the destruction of something pure without wounding the spirit inside them that recognizes goodness. Every heart carries a quiet inner knowing, a knowing that whispers when something is wrong, a knowing that pulls when something is right. Your ex betrayed that knowing the moment they chose the comfort of lies over the discomfort of truth. And now, that inner knowing has returned to demand accountability. It does not yell. It does not punish with violence. It simply shows them everything they refuse to see. This internal collapse also comes with a horrifying clarity. They realize you were never fighting against them. You were fighting for them. You were trying to protect the relationship from the very influences that eventually poisoned it. You were battling forces they didn't even recognize, and instead of standing beside you, they joined those forces without understanding what they were participating in. This truth suffocates them now, because it reveals the depth of the betrayal in a way they can no longer escape. Each day brings a new confrontation with the consequences of their choices. They remember moments when you asked for understanding and they dismissed you. They remember times when your voice shook with hurt and they labeled it manipulation. They remember seeing you break, yet convincing themselves you deserved it. These memories do not fade with time, they sharpen. They take on new meaning now that the lies have dissolved. Painful meaning, unforgiving meaning. The mind punishes itself long before life ever does. Your ex is living that punishment now. Every attempt to explain their actions falls apart under the weight of truth. Every excuse they once believed sounds hollow. Every defense they once used turns into evidence against them. Their conscience has become a courtroom where every memory is called to the stand, and none of them speak in their favor. What hurts them most is not just losing you, it is realizing that they were the instrument of your suffering. They can no longer pretend someone else is responsible. The manipulators planted the seeds, but your ex watered them. The manipulators whispered, but your ex acted. That is the damage they cannot undo. And now they must face the haunting truth that what they participated in was not just a misunderstanding, but a quiet destruction of someone who loved them without condition. This realization marks the beginning of their decline, not because you wish it upon them, but because life always returns the lessons a person avoided. They now understand that they cannot escape the consequences of betraying a pure heart. The collapse they feel inside is the universe's way of returning everything they gave, twice as hard, twice as deep, twice as loud. In the end, the truth always finds its way to the surface, no matter how deeply it was buried, no matter how cleverly it was disguised, no matter how long it was ignored. And now the truth stands before them with a weight they cannot escape. They see the full picture at last. The lies that shaped them, the voices that misled them, the weakness that guided their choices, and the purity they destroyed without understanding its worth. They finally understand that the heart they helped break was the same heart that would have carried them through every storm. They see now that the person they abandoned was the one soul who would have fought for them long after others grew tired. But understand this. What they face now is not your responsibility to heal, nor your burden to carry. The collapse of their conscience is not your battlefield. The consequences returning to them are not for you to manage. You did your part. You loved, you tried, you endured. You remained honest even when the world around you twisted the truth. Life will handle what comes next. Life will unravel every deception, expose every manipulator, and return every hidden injustice to its rightful place. Your story does not end with what they did to you. Your story continues with who you become despite it. You walk forward with a heart that survived what was meant to destroy it. You rise with a strength that their betrayal only sharpened. You stand with a clarity that their absence made possible, and while they remain haunted by the truth they refuse to see, you move into a future shaped not by their blindness, but by your resilience. Let the truth do its work in their life. Let the consequences find their path. Let the lessons carve themselves into their soul. You are not responsible for the reckoning that now shadows their footsteps. You are responsible only for protecting the peace you fought so hard to reclaim. Your spirit lives, your heart remains, your purpose endures. And the one who was manipulated into killing your light must now learn to live in the darkness they created, while you walk forward into the dawn that was always meant for you.